Welcome back to my basement. I hope you had a good fall break, and I hope the midterm wasn't too taxing on you. I personally feel that open book tests are the best because if you know the answer, you'll write it down. If you don't know the answer, at least I will go find it because I'm not going to do poorly on a test. Hopefully, it worked out for you. So, chapter 8, religion and identity. Religion is a very complicated topic. Some people believe their um, belief or path is the only right one, and everybody else is wrong. I, on the other hand, love studying the different religions. I want to know why other people feel differently. So I looked forward to reading this chapter. It honestly leaned more on Islam than I would have preferred, but I guess that's what's in the news nowadays. So according to the text, religion is the oldest form of cultural identity. Through generations, we're indoctrinated from our parents and their parents and their parents and their parents. And not everybody follows their parents. Don't get me wrong. But most do. Many follow their parents, stray away, and then come back to it. I don't know if I told you, but my brother became Catholic, and my sister asked my mom, "Did it bother you Chris became a Catholic?" And she said, "You didn't seem to care when you became a Methodist." So we we follow different religions because they speak to us somehow. I have a very good friend that is Mormon, and I was in a Mormon Boy Scout troop, but I was never a Mormon. But he and I enjoy theological discussions. I want to know what he's thinking on his side. He wants to know what I'm thinking on mine. So, as I spoke earlier in the different dimensions of culture, that religion is in the first dimension, is given to you. What you do with it after that is up to you. Have you ever explored different religious philosophies? I've taken a couple of religious theory classes and it compared different religions and Native American religious traditions and Buddhism and Hinduism. I even interviewed a friend of mine that was Buddhist for a paper I wrote. And we had very different topics or perspectives of things, but it was great sitting there, have a cup of coffee with a friend and chatting about something and learning. I have a friend actually that works at a private Baptist college, teaches public speaking. And one of his assignments is to find something in the Quran you agree with. And the parents just go freaking ballistic. "You're not going to have my child reading that heathen, blah, 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 blah." And he said, "Well, back up. I just want them to open their minds and find something they agree with. Because if we're going to tear down all these walls that have been created, if we're going to build bridges, we have to be able to understand the other's perspective. I'm not trying to convert them to Islam. I'm not Islamic," is what he told the parents. But they just flipped out when they heard their precious little ones were being shown something that wasn't out of the Bible. So Buddhism is very interesting. It's about self-reflection. It's about me. You're a master of your own destiny. I find a lot of the Buddhist philosophy interesting because I believe in many cases it crosses boundaries. If you are the master of your own destiny and you prefer a Baptist church, then go to a Baptist church. But if you want to look at different things, and by the way, there's over 5,000 different types of Baptist in the United States alone. So if they all can't agree on what Baptist is, then there's some discussion in that in itself. There's about 500 million Buddhists worldwide. They have four notable truths. Life is unhappy. Life is unhappiness and suffering. If you live, you are going to be unhappy and suffer about things. We suffer because we have desires. According to the Buddhist perspective, your desires for things causes you to long for them, want for them, and cause you to be unhappy because you don't have them. Feelings can be overcome by not desiring. You know, if you don't want wealth, then you can be perfectly happy living on a modest income. The path to nirvana has 8 right ways. Right view, how do you see the world? Right thinking, how do you think about it? Right speech, how do you talk about it? Have you ever met somebody that every time they talked, they were down, everything was wrong, it was always somebody else's fault? Right action, what do? You know, when you see somebody that needs help? And in the day and age we're living in now, it's much more difficult. When I was young and you saw somebody broke down the side of the road, you could pull over and help them out. Yes, even back before my time, people would fake being broke down and rob people. I mean, it happened, okay? But it didn't happen that much. One day my son was late coming home, you know, and parents get freaking out. Oh, where you been? And he said, well, there's this old guy, he's about, you know, like 80 on the side of the road, broke down, and I stopped and helped him. Part of me felt proud. My son helped this guy that needed help. The parent part of me was like, you could have been killed. So, you know, that was prior to cell phones. Right livelihood. How do you live your life? Right diligence. Do you do the things that you should do? Right mindfulness. Are you mindful about things? Are you mindful about other people? When you have a conversation with somebody, is it always about you? Or is it about them? Or is it about both of you? Right concentration. You are taking classes and hopefully concentrating on this lecture. But sometimes there's other things that interfere with your concentration. Sometimes it's hard to focus on what you're supposed to focus on. The Mahayana Buddhists believe in 6 teachings: charity, the 5 moral precepts. Now, see if these sound familiar to those of you with your religious belief. I have no idea what any of you are. Don't take a life. Don't murder, right? Don't take what isn't freely given. Let's see, that means like don't steal. Abstain from misuse of the senses. Don't lie. And abstain from intoxicants. If you actually look at Buddhism, Hinduism, Confucianism, Taoism, Shintoism, Islam, Jewish, and Mormonism, most of them say the same thing. You know, the Christians have the 10 Commandments. Might be 8 and something else, might be 12 somewhere else, but if you find them and read them, you're going to, you know, it's like, hey, that sounds familiar. That's one of the things that people can find in the Quran, because it says that taking a life is wrong in the Quran. Taking an innocent life. Japan. Japan are basically mostly Buddhist, but they have a national religion called Shinto. Shinto means the way of the gods. And there's 3 basically precepts to Shintoism. Worship the gods of Japan. Loyalty to Japan. And cultivation of pure Japanese spirit. Here in America, we have separation of church and state. I can't tell you which God to believe in or how to pray. Although there's a lot of people in government that want to, but according to the Constitution, they can't. But some countries, Shinto, the way it's nationalistic. There's two different types of Shintos. The popular Shintos has its strength in the home. The home is the center of your life. The home is what you are loyal to. The home is what you focus on. You pray to gods from your home and from your family. And the sect Shinto believes in reincarnation and service to humanity. Remember earlier I talked about interviewing that Buddhist friend of mine. They also believe in reincarnation. And she said, you know, a whole bunch of people have died since the beginning of time. I said, yeah. And she said, you know, is it possible heaven could be getting kind of a crowded space? I said, okay, well, tell me more about this reincarnation. Your spirit comes back in another body. She said, well, sometimes. But there's another aspect of it. I have children. When I go, I will live on through my children and my children's children and my children's children. Christianity. Most of you are probably familiar with Christianity. I don't want to make a blanket statement because you all may not be Christian. But it's the largest religious belief system that we have on earth. And Roman Emperor Constantine, when he converted to Christianity, and he converted to Christianity because he had this big battle. And he prayed that he would see a sign from God that he would win. And he saw a cross. And so he converted to Christianity. Well, there was a Greek monk named Martin Luther who campaigned for Catholic reform. And he led the Protestant branch of Christianity. You know, we talk often nowadays about the difference between Islam and Christianity. Back in my early days, prior to most of my memory, Ireland was a very important thing in history because the Catholics ran part of Ireland and the Protestants ran the other part, Northern and Ireland. And the Catholics and the Protestants were blowing each other up. Now, the Catholics believe in the Christian Bible that says, thou shalt not kill. And the Protestants believe in the Christian Bible that says, thou shalt not kill. But they were blowing each other up. Islam is the second largest group of religious believers. And it was founded by a guy named Muhammad. They identify as, people that believe in Islam identify as Muslims. So those of you that talk about a Muslim religion, you're wrong. It's an Islam religion or Islamic. Muslim are the followers. And Muslim means submitters. There's two different types of Muslim sects, two main types. There's the Sunni, which makes up about 90% of the Islamic population, Islamic religion. And its leadership is passed through caliphs. And caliphs is their word for successor. The Shiite believe, and that's the other 10%, believe that leadership should stay with the family of the prophet. Meaning, Reverend Billy Graham could only hand over the reins to his son because it's got to be a family thing. Kind of like, you know, like royalty. They're the royal person, and their son is special because they're of the blood they had, the blue blood. So the Islamic religion believes in loyalty to family. And Islam believes that in the God of Abraham. The God of Abraham is the God of the Old Testament, the Jewish Bible, is the God of the New Testament, is the God of the Quran, is the God of the Mormon book. They all believe in the same God, Abraham's God, but they believe a little bit differently. For example, the Jews do not believe that Jesus was God's son. Neither do the Muslims. They don't believe that. They believe Jesus was a prophet, or Jesus was a prophet, but they do not believe he was the Son of God. And they believe Muhammad was the last prophet. The Mormons, on the other hand, believe Joseph Smith was a prophet. So we had a prophet after Muhammad, according to them. See, some of this isn't in the textbook because it was a good broad understanding, but there were some other things that I think they needed to point out. According to the Islamic religion, freedom of thought, you have a right to think about what you want to think about, but you should always think about religion. And one of the things the book pointed out was that it's difficult to believe in freedom of religion without abandoning religious beliefs. And the point they make, and I make it a lot briefer than they did, believe in my God or I will kill you. A lot of people got converted to Christianity because they were pagans and they were told, this is the God you are, and if you don't, we'll kill you because you're heathens. And that's kind of like against what the biblical references about religion. It's not, it doesn't say, have them believe in me or kill them. It says, thou shalt not kill. But more people have lost their lives over religion than any other thing since the beginning of time. The Crusades, the Knights of Templar, all these things happened because of religion. Religious practices. In Islam, you have to make a public witness. Publicly, you have to say you believe in Muhammad, you believe in God, and the textbook has all the little things about it. And you must do prayers 5 times a day. And there's a certain way you have to do prayers. You have to get a rug and lay it down, and you have to kneel down, and you have to bow down, prostrate yourself, and you have to face Mecca. Ramadan, how many of you have heard of Ramadan? Not ramen noodles, but Ramadan. Ramadan is the 9th month in the Muslim year. One thing that confused me about Ramadan for a while was it seemed like it happened at different times. So I thought it was like, 2 or 3 times a year. Because last time, I remember a couple of years ago, it was in the fall. Now it's in the spring. What's going on? Well, they follow the lunar calendar. And the lunar calendar is 11 days shorter than the solar calendar that we use. And so Ramadan, their 9th month, rotates throughout the year through our months. It's not our 9th month. Well, let me rephrase that hour. I hate using that term. It's not the 9th month of the standard U.S. calendar or other Western countries' calendars, which would be September. It's a time for reflection. They reflect on that because the prophet Muhammad received revelations from the angel Gabriel. And that's what Ramadan is about. You fast during the day if you're an adult. You don't have to if you're a little kid or if you're old and feeble. I'm not that old yet. And you reflect on what the revelations and what it means to be Muslim and believe in God. Islam in the U.S., it started actually when slaves were brought here from Africa. Many of them had been exposed to Islam, and they brought it with them. And currently, the majority of American Muslims are African American. The Arab states. How many of you thought that Saudi Arabia and Arab were synonymous? Well, if you're Saudi Arabian, you are Arabian. But if you are Arabian, you are not necessarily Saudi Arabian. It's more than the country of Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia's geography is about 90% of the Arabian Peninsula. They have vast oil reserves. That's where they have their money from. This is something that later on I'm going to talk about work, and I'll come back to this. But 98% of Saudi Arabia is desert. And most of the cities and all are either around oases, rivers, or on the coast. The ruling Saud family is a bunch of people that royalty says these are the guys who are in charge. The state is controlled by the Saud family, and what they say goes. How many of you remember of hearing of a reporter, New York Times reporter, New York something Post or Times, that was killed in the Saudi Arabian embassy? This is the third state. They have controlled by the Saud family. They had two earlier kingdoms. This date back to about 1745. And amazingly, they broke up because there was so much infighting over who was supposed to take over and who was supposed to be in charge. And the current kingdom gained control about in the 1920s. And right now, there is some upheaval. More recently, there have been upheaval in who was going to take charge. And one of the princes had a bunch of the other princes jailed because I guess he felt threatened by them. I don't know. The Quran is part of the Saudi Arabian Constitution. Sharia law is the primary law for families, commercial, criminal, and contracts. Did you know before you read this chapter that it's against the Quran to charge or pay interest? What would happen to our banking system? Matwan, or a royal decree, have been issued recently for other things that the Sharia law does not cover. And actually, some women have been elected to public office. So some, women, you hear that women are second-class citizens, pushing it back. In some local areas, they're coming forward and taking charge, and they have to follow traditions and yada, yada, yada. As a matter of fact, in the textbook, one of the things they pointed out was one woman was charged with breaking the law because she spoke to a man when she was campaigning. So they had to campaign, women had to campaign like through social media, so they couldn't talk to a man. I don't know how many women would put up with that. And I wouldn't blame you, I wouldn't put up with it either. The media itself is controlled. You see what the king wants you to see, or his representatives want you to see, what the gatekeepers want you to see. And in some aspects, don't get me wrong, that is kind of good. And here's why I say kind of. If what they are giving you is the facts and let you make up your mind, that's great. Today, with internet the way it is, we have 24-hour news 7 days a week, and we get a lot more than the facts. We get facts, we get made up facts, we get biased facts, we get right out lies, we get out and out lies, we get everything. and we have to kind of muddle through it. Unfortunately, the media controlled does not say, here are the facts, you make up your mind. It's here are the things that make us look good. And the things that make us look bad, you don't ever see. Regional instability. There's been a decline in the oil revenue. And there's been some infighting between the family members. And we have some groups fighting for control, more want to be more conservative or more progressive. The Islamic State is trying to take over and say they represent all of Islam, and they are the true leaders. And you have wars with Yemen and other countries that are next to them because they have a different perspective than the Saudis have. The dominant culture patterns, they're nature oriented. There's no distinction between religion and temporal aspects. They are activity oriented. This is one of the things that kind of made me smirk, I guess. According to the text, earning a living through labor is a duty and a virtue. How many of those people in the royal family earn a living through labor? But they are devout Muslims, and they believe in the Quran, and they pay other people to do their work. They don't do work. They all live off of the earnings from the nice pile of oil their country happens to be sitting on. Time orientation. I mentioned earlier about the lunar calendar. They follow a different calendar. I'll leave that at that. Human nature orientation. Every person is born free of sin. Does that sound familiar? Innocent. I mean, when you look at that innocent little baby. They're born free of sin. But when you reach the age of maturity, you're held accountable for your actions. The book neglected to say or didn't specify what they feel the age of maturity is. I have had I've got 3 children. I've got 7 grandchildren. A couple of them that are pretty young are awful mature. But what is the age of maturity? Is it 18 because you can vote, or is it 21 because you can buy alcohol? So I would have loved for them to have had that in there. There's one purpose for human life, according to the Quran, and that's to worship God. Relational orientation is a group relation. It's not individualistic, and it's family, clan, tribe, and government in that order. And communication barriers. The one that the book spent most of its time talking about was the recent, a couple of presidents ago, when Barack Obama refused to say radical Islamic. And he refused to say it because he said all Muslims, all people that believe in Islam, are not radical. There are many that are centrist, moderate, that believe in peaceful confrontation, believe in allowing different things to happen, believe in not killing and all this other stuff. And so there are radical Islamics, but radical Islamic would put a bad light, and cause people to automatically think negative of all Islamics. So that all Muslims. So that's why he wouldn't use that term. And if you look at today's politics in the United States, you can see kind of the same thing. The extreme right in politics are often all basically called evangelical. And most are not. But the loudest ones you hear are the extreme ones on left and right. So Obama didn't want to label all Muslims with this radical Islamic terrorist term when he knew that a small number of them were radical Islamic terrorists, like the bunch of guys that came from Saudi Arabia that flew planes into the World Trade Center. We've been in war with Afghanistan for 20 years, but the guys that hijacked those planes were Saudi Arabian citizens. We can go to war with Saudi Arabia. So you have extremists, and what you say, how you say things, can affect other people, can color the situation. If somebody doesn't know that person, you say something negative about them because you're pissed off about something, they could think, okay, that person's like that. I don't want to know them. But the two of them could get along great. Maybe you and that person just mix like oil and water. So that's chapter 8. I'll see you again for chapter 9. Got any questions, call me. The number's in the syllabus. Email me. Don't wait to the last minute and say, can I do something for extra credit? Bye, y'all.